all the anger that I was holding was affecting my body. And I was literally repeating the same day every day. Like I was always in a constant state of anger over and over and over again. And once I realized that I could either hold on to my past, right, and allow it for it to make me angry today, or I could choose to heal and move to that and just be present in how I'm feeling, because it really is a choice. You can hold your past as like this armor and carry it with you and hold this heavy backpack, or you can choose to let it go, right, in whatever capacity that looks like for you, in order to embrace who you can be without that.
Welcome to the Divine Hangout. I'm your host, Valerie Jubilee. It is my intention that when you listen to this podcast, you experience an increase in peace, abundance, and divine miracles in your life experience. If you love all things spirituality, wellness, healing, manifestation, and miracles, you are in the exact right place at the exact right time. Let's enter the portal together. Welcome to the Divine Hangout. It's Hillary, and today I'm joined by Latha Jay and Valerie Inez. Latha is a manifestation coach and Ayurvedic practitioner, and Valerie is an intuition and psychic development coach. And the two of them have written a book about shadow work together, which we're going to talk all about today. Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Awesome. So maybe we could start by defining shadow work. If one of you or both of you want to add anything about the definition of shadow work, like what is it?
Shadow work is the unhealed parts of us that we try to deny, hide, or reject. So these are things, a lot of these things happen in our childhood where we are little subconscious sponges and we end up soaking up all these beliefs that other people have handed down to us. So these are things that trigger us. These are our projections, and these are patterns and cycles that we repeat in our lives. So that is just the brief summation of shadow work.
Latha, anything to add on that?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think Valerie did a great job with that. It's just that it's really a lot of times shadow work pops up in our life as limiting beliefs, and it tries to control what we're doing or make the decisions for us rather than us making our own decisions from an empowered place. And the shadows largely stem from our childhood, from impactful events that have happened or things that we have been told, or we start to believe, and then we continue to repeat that thought again and again till it becomes a belief, and then we create it as our reality.
Okay, so that's the shadow and kind of where the shadow comes from. But then the shadow work would be sort of, I guess, awareness would be the first step.
Absolutely.
And then working through and actually giving it the attention it needs rather than avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. How did this book come to be? How did you guys get connected?
We actually met through TikTok, which is pretty fun, right? We're both content creators on TikTok and Instagram. And I had seen a bunch of videos that Valerie had posted. She had posted a video in particular about spirit guides and asking your spirit guide to wake you up in the morning. And I just loved it. It was so cute. It was fun. I love the way she was talking about it. I love the reception of it. Something about it. It was just like really cool. So I friended her, like mutuals on TikTok, and we started messaging and talking to each other. And then a while later, I host a content creator retreat. So every year I host one content creator retreat. I invite content creators that I like and say, hey, come hang out with me in the jungle. Let's like get to know each other and have fun. And I invited Valerie one year, and she came. And I was like, soul sisters, instant besties, She actually was teaching a workshop at the retreat on shadow work. And I was like, yeah, she really gets this. I love the way she speaks about it, very articulate. And I think it was like a year later, I had the opportunity to write this book, and I was like, I know exactly who I want to write it with. Like, there was no question. As soon as I got the information about the book, I was like, Valerie, you want to write a book with me? I texted her, and she's like, okay, yeah. That was it.
I love that. Awesome. So why is shadow work important to each of you?
So I think shadow work is so important because it's a part of the healing journey, and we basically go about our lives just doing what we've been told, right? Based on society, based on our culture, our family, schooling, like all the things have shaped this person that we are today. And you walk around with this mask that you have on you without even knowing why you are the way that you are. And then you find yourself getting upset about, when somebody talks to you in a certain way, and it kind of like triggers a memory in you, right? Or if it You find yourself in the same kind of relationship over and over and over again with just a different person. So things like that in our life shape who we are. And without the acknowledgement of that, and really unpeeling back all those layers that are not authentic to you, you'll never know who you actually are. And I think that's why it's so important to do this work, so you can, one, figure out who you're not, and two, start creating who you actually are without all of those layers, without all of those masks, limiting beliefs. And so that you can actually shine in your authentic being and do what you want to do, right? And live the life that you actually want to live from a place of true power and authenticity.
I think that when you have a lot of shadows, life can feel very heavy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like you're dragging, a bowling ball or baggage with you all the time. And I think a lot of us get used to that, right? I don't know if you ever went hiking, and when you first put on your hiking pack, you're like, "Oh, this is heavy." By the time you get to the top of the mountain, you come down, you're like, whatever, I got it, and you get used to it so much until you take it off, and you're like, "Whoa." That was heavy again. Like, then that's the memory coming back. So we're so used to having that pack on. We're used to carrying that baggage that it doesn't. We sometimes can't even tell that it's slowing us down, or it's taking so much more effort for us to get through to whatever kind of situation we're trying to get to the next thing in our life, until we're able to put that down. And we're like, whoa. And then you're like, whoa, my life is zooming, like things change for you. You feel like a new brightness, a lightness to life. You feel like you can go for things that you thought previously you couldn't go for. You can attain different levels of success in your home, family, health, wealth, career, everything. Right. And it's just like so much shifts for you. And a lot of times also, when we think we have a limiting belief in one area, it does, affect that one area, but it affects so much else. And doing the shadow work, even in that one space, can create this clarity in so many other aspects of our life.
I love that. It's like the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're constantly
Mm-hmm.
avoiding and shoving down in one area of life, then yeah, that's going to trickle into everything else. Do you guys have a specific example from your lives where doing some type of shadow work has helped you overcome something in your life?
Yeah, tons of them.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So, as a little kid growing up, from immigrant parents in America, it was like a really interesting dynamic, But as I was growing up, I really wanted to become a singer. So when I was probably about 9, 10, I joined the school choir, and I was so excited about it because it was like this area of self-expression. And I could, I saw, like, I think Selena was big back then, and I was like the original Selena, not Selena Gomez. And I was like so excited to just be like her and sing and be expressive, join the choir. It was one day during choir practice. We were in the auditorium on these bleachers, probably about 40 to 60 kids, like a lot of kids, practicing in the choir. And my music teacher as we're standing on the bleacher, she calls me down. She goes, "Latha, come here." I'm like, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to give a solo. Like, I'm going to be like, Selena, we're going to do a duet, like so hyped. Come down. And she goes, "You have a terrible voice. You should not be in the choir. You should probably not even speak. Like, it's that bad. Sit down." And I go and I sit down in my little folding chair in the auditorium, and I was just like, crushed, And in that moment, I'm just like, as the 40 plus kids on the bleachers are just erupting in laughter, because of course it's so hilarious. And I was just like, whew, I could have crumpled into a little ball and just died right there, right? But in that moment, I had made the decision that my music teacher was right. My voice didn't matter. I shouldn't speak up. And pretty much, like, I wasn't good enough to be in the choir or literally for anything else. And from that point forward, for years, probably more than a decade at that point, I had carried on these ideas. I shouldn't speak up for myself. My voice didn't matter. I shouldn't speak up for myself. My voice didn't matter. Right. It was in my early 20s when I started to do shadow work. And I realized, like, wait a second, I have a lot to say, and I have some good things to say. And and it can really impact people. Started to do shadow work around this, really, like, uncovered this moment in my life. And I was like, ooh, that was rough, And I made a decision in that moment consciously that I didn't have to continue to be that really embarrassed and hurt 9, 10-year-old. I could be the powerful person that I was growing into becoming. And that's when my life completely changed. Right. And now I literally am a public speaker. I literally create content. I speak every single day, whether it's in video or to clients or to my group coaching program, anywhere. I'm constantly speaking. I'm constantly adding value through my voice. And it was like this little aspect of shadow work. If I wasn't able to overcome that, I think that there would be a big miss, not only for myself, but for the world, for all the lives that I'm able to touch.
Wow, beautiful. What about you, Valerie?
Okay, so I'll give you my example because I think a lot of people will resonate with this one. I used to find myself in the same kind of relationship with a different person. And this relationship was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, super disrespectful, just like toxic in general. And I remember walking around my neighborhood one day thinking that everybody else was having that same relationship until it hit me. I was like, oh, this is not normal at all. And it was just like an epiphany that I was allowing myself to be those into those kinds of relationships because I didn't really love myself, right? Like I was seeking that love and validation from other people who were traumatized in their own way and couldn't give me that love. So it was like us meeting each other at the same point. And at that moment, I was like, I am so done with this. I'm not going to allow this to be my future anymore because I have 3 kids and they don't deserve that either, right? So I remember I went home and I did shadow work on that. Like, where is this coming from? You know, I had a lot of trauma in my childhood and it really just resonated deeply with how I grew up. And I didn't know any different, right? I didn't know there was actually healthy relationships. Like seeing Letha and her husband is just wild to me because I didn't know that actually existed in real people. I thought it was like fake, right? You're just, it's for show. Turns out there is actual love out there and people actually do have healthy, emotionally mature relationships, which is amazing. But I knew that I wasn't experiencing that. And that was something that I wanted to do. So I remember I went under the full moon and did like a whole full moon ritual release. And that was the first time I ever felt energy work is powerful because it really released the resistance and the expectation of how I thought relationships were supposed to be at that moment. And I actually felt like there was space in my body. I felt safe in my body for once. And what's funny is right when I did that, my ex husband came outside at the same time and he felt the energy leave and he was like, "What did you just do?" And I was like, "You don't know. I just ended our relationship here." And at that moment, my marriage shifted and well, I'm in the process of getting a divorce, but it was one of the most powerful, transformative shadow work things that I did in my own life because it led me to a point where now I actually love myself. I adore myself. I respect myself. So anybody who is in my space will respect me the same, or you're not even allowed, period. Right?
Wow, that is
Changer.
amazing, and I'm resonating with it myself in my life. I recently I realized this pattern of allowing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, horrible treatment, and I'm 30 years old and I just realized like all of my relationships and I knew where it came from. It stemmed from like not having an emotionally available father growing up. And so I was aware of that, but I was
Mm-hmm.
still like aware of the pattern but not making a different choice. Like it was just
Right.
still stuck in it, still not fully, I guess, not fully accepting it, or realizing that something else is available.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my last relationship was a super toxic narcissist situation, and it just ended so like dramatically. And then yeah, just seeing what other people like, and how like mostly online, like I didn't really have anything growing up of an example of like proper emotionally mature love. So I just kind
Mm-hmm.
of took bits and pieces from what I saw online, and just yeah, just realizing like the worthiness, and then making a different choice and not allowing situationships, and not like giving into like just breadcrumbs and all of this, and just like making a
Yes.
firm energetic decision that I was not going to just settle for the bullshit anymore. And I met somebody like within 5 months of ending that horrible relationship, and it's just like the complete opposite just from making that energetic decision, and it's been so
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
So
think so many women struggle with that because you just expect like I just get breadcrumbs, right? Like if I try harder, then they'll change, but it doesn't work that way. Like we cannot force healing and shadow work on other people for the sake of it's somehow like I think there's just a whole topic around that. Like you can't change yourself to change somebody else. It just doesn't work that way. And that's when you make the decision no longer, right? I deserve so much more than breadcrumbs. I
yeah.
deserve real authentic love. And that is how you found yourself here in this
Yes.
wonderful relationship.
Yes.
And that's
And
a
the
really good
responsibility piece, like, because it's me that keeps allowing that behavior. Like,
Right.
yeah, what they're doing isn't okay, but I'm still here sticking around and making the choice to like allow it to continue. So until you make a
Hmm.
different choice, then it's just going to keep on continuing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because a lot of times people think that shadows are developing from something super traumatic that happens, something very impactful or something someone directly says to you. But this is a really good point here, because it's the observation of what you see in your life, whether it's between your parents, how your teacher acts to someone else, how something is happening, right? That in itself is impactful, but you might not even, categorize it as such. It's just something that you observe, but then you recreate it in your life, those relationships, in that absenteeness, in the allowing of, maybe not what you truly deserve at a lower level. So that's a really good point to say.
Absolutely. What about, so with your guys's book, so there, I was kind of looking into it. It's on Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just one of the pages had a little bit of inner child work. So I'm just wondering, is there a distinction? Is that kind of like an element of shadow work, or what in your opinion would be like the difference or the similarities between those?
I think they're very similar, right? Shadow work has been around forever, like thousands of years essentially, but it's only really taken on the name shadow work, I think, in the past few years. Before that, it's been called wounded child work, inner work, self-development. All of it is essentially the same. It's you looking into yourself, into your past, into being observant of what's happened, occurred, how you interpreted what's happened, occurred in your life, right? But essentially it boils down to it being you looking into your life and being observant of what your events are, what the situation is.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. So I was just talking to a mentorship client yesterday, and we were doing shadow work. So I do this in my program where we do shadow work and we do the healing together. And she found that she was constantly talking to herself in a way that was disrespectful and rude to herself. Like, it's too late, you're too old, what's the point, right? And I was like, just think about it. Would you talk to your 8-year-old self that way? Could you, or your daughter for that matter, would you talk to her, or would you allow anybody else to talk to her? And when I said that, she was like, oh my God, that's verbal abuse. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what you're doing to yourself. And our shadow is manifested in such a way that it affect, like, a lot of it does stem from childhood wounds, right? Not everything, but there is so many things that happen in childhood that create this shadow aspect of ourselves. And if you think about it, you can actually bring yourself to a moment in time where you can talk to your childhood self and be like, I cannot believe we're talking to yourself that way. It's led you up to this point where you're continuing to do that same disrespectful pattern over and over to yourself. But now it's you versus you, right? Which it's always been you versus you. But you get to make the decision. Am I going to talk to myself that way? Or am I going to choose to talk to myself in a different way, right? It's wild.
And
it's
also,
wild to think about.
And then when I've practiced inner child work before, it's like giving that version of you, like let's say you have an example like Latha was saying, like when somebody said something to you when you're a child and then you took that on as a belief and then carried that with you. So in that moment, if you can go back to that, if you have the memory, it doesn't matter if you don't, but in a certain case, if you did, then giving that child what they need in that moment is something that I've practiced. Like they need acceptance and love, and just like loving them and doing a little imagination session in your mind about that. Like what is the way that you guys like to do it? Is that it? Just like imagining you're with them? And
I've done that before many times. Yeah, because your inner child wants to be seen, heard, and validated, just like your shadow, right? Your shadow aspect doesn't want to be repressed and shoved back in the corner, or unalived for that matter. It wants to be seen, acknowledged, and loved so that you can see that shadow aspect of yourself, right? And integrate it in your life, hold its hand and be like, look, I know that we've been doing this for so long, but no longer will we allow this. And I've done that myself, like not really. I've done an inner child work before, right, where I'm meeting my inner child, but I've actually met younger versions of myself who have chosen to lead toxic relationships, right, at that moment. Granted, she did go back, right? That's why I'm here where I am. But I'll be like, you made such a good decision doing that. I love you so much. Keep going, right? And sending that energy, and then that way it can ripple out into your now moment, and just like it really does change the dynamic of how you feel right now. So yeah, meditation, imagination, visualization. I've done that.
I often think of our shadow or our wounded child as like a literal child, right? Anybody that has a child or is interacting with a child, probably like under 4 years old, knows. Like my kids do this all the time. They'll come to me and be like, "Mom, mommy, 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 mommy," like pulling on my sleeve. I'm like, I'm doing something, chill for a second. Like, "Mom, mom, mom." I'm like, "Okay, what do you want?" And they're like, "I just want to say hi." love you, bye. And they'll run off and go do whatever we're doing, right? And it's like just like this simple moment of acknowledgement fulfills them, and they're
Mm-hmm.
happy, they're joyful. And this is the same thing with your shadow. It's like when we
Yes.
see it, when we're giving it acknowledgement, it's like, oh, okay, I'm seeing, right? And it stops popping up so much in your life in a way that is, disruptive to you, essentially. And it's profound. It's really truly life changing doing shadow work.
What would you guys say about um, coping mechanisms such as like people use crutches to avoid, like phone addiction or like food addiction or like sugar or chocolate or validation from men, like all, like I don't know, just these are, I've struggled with some of these things. So how do you think, what is the best way to break one of these like coping mechanisms? Like, is there like, would you journal? Would you like stop and like ask yourself why you're doing it? Like sometimes I feel even now today, like I'll get caught in like just having too much sugar or something like that. Like, how do
Mhm.
you guys think about that? Like patterns of behavior, like addictive patterns?
Coping
Yeah.
mechanisms go so far, right? Like, I can share personally too, because like I was an alcoholic for a decade, and that was my coping mechanism, right?
Mm.
Because I always felt like my voice didn't matter. But guess what? When I was drunk, my inhibitions went out the window, and I was the life of the party, and everybody could love me, and it didn't really matter, and I didn't have, like all. It was just like it shifted who I was as a person. So I drank like every day, and it's like that really shifted for me when I realized it was an issue, right? When I realized that's not how I wanted to continue to live my life, when I realized I was having physical issues because of what I was doing, right? And that might show up for someone who has a sugar addiction as pre-diabetes or gaining a lot of weight or, having other kind of symptoms in their body. That might be for somebody who's constantly in these abusive relationships, feeling like crap all the time. Try, feel it, or maybe even a physical abusive relationship. Like it's going to shift with the moment that you acknowledge that it's a problem. Because how many people out there are like, yeah, it's okay that I drink 7 times a week. It's okay that I, eat 5 candy bars a day or whatever the case is. That's okay for me. Well, then that's going to continue to be okay for you. But
Mm.
until you make a decision to say, I don't want to do this anymore, there's something more here,
Mm.
and take a look at that, then that's when it's going to shift. But as long as you okay it in your mind, it's going to continue to be okay in your life. So.
Yeah, I'll
Right. So
give you my own example. Trigger warning. I used to be a binge eater for like over a decade, a really long time. And I used to be also heavy into working out and clean eating. So I would do all the things until nighttime, until my kids were in sleep, until I had time to process the day. And then I would binge eat. And then I realized I was basically canceling out everything I was doing. I was harming my body. I ended up getting stretch marks because I would fluctuate so much from the weight that I was gaining binge eating. And then when I realized I'm actually binge eating because I'm trying to avoid processing how I'm feeling. It was just way to mask the pain that I was feeling. Um, Once I decided I cannot keep doing this anymore, I decided to start sitting with myself. So when I would feel like I'm about to go binge eat, I would be like, no, what we're going to do is we're going to go face what we're feeling. So I would literally sit down in my meditation spot, put my hands on my body, and just ask, what's going on, right? And I would just sit with myself and allow myself to acknowledge how I was feeling. Because I think when we mask with whatever substance it is, it's because you're avoiding what your body is trying to tell you, what your shadow is trying to tell you. And the more that you acknowledge it and try to dive into it, the more that you can actually heal that and move past it so that you don't feel like you have to use that substance in order to mask it. And so I would really just sit with the uncomfortable emotions and allow them to move through me, right? Through energy work, through grounding, through crying, right? Just allowing it to be what it is. And now I don't binge eat anymore. Like for me, that's something. It's such a big success story because I don't really share this story a lot because I feel like it's super not. Oh, I guess embarrassing because no one knew that about me, right? It was just something that I did in my garage, hiding because it was gross. But now that I've moved past it, I can see why I did it and how I was able to move through it so that when those emotions come up, I don't even have the trigger anymore. It's not an issue because I decided to dive deep into my shadow.
mm.
Mhm.
Thank you guys for sharing that. Um, do you think that shadow work or inner child healing or whatever you want to call it is important for leveling up in life and manifesting like what you want to create into your life?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And a lot of people ask us this question actually, like, do I have to do all of my shadow work before I can manifest? And I'm like, no, you don't. And when you work on your shadows, your manifestations come to fruition much quicker because those limiting beliefs of I can't have that, I'm not good enough to do that, I'm not are gone, or at least much more manageable, that you can get past them, that you can kind of zoom your energy towards what it is that you're creating, that you can see the opportunities and then take them, be in that aligned action. So when that job promotion comes up, instead of you sitting there being like, I'm not good enough for that, I'm not going to even apply, you're like, I'm apply, see what happens, and you apply for it. You go for those opportunities that are there and presented to you. So shadow work is vital in that space of manifesting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Valerie?
Well, I was going to add, if you don't believe that you can have it, then you won't have it.
Right. You're not going to take the action if you don't have the belief behind it. And even if you do take the action, then because your belief isn't behind it, it's going to not really work.
Yeah, like you can do all the affirmations and visualizations and the 369 method, but if you actually don't subconsciously feel worthy of it, or like you could, whatever the self-limiting beliefs is, it's not going to happen. It's just not.
Right. And so Latha was saying, you don't have to complete all your shadow work to be able to manifest what you want. Like it's kind of a journey. So does the work ever end, or is there always going to be something to like overcome and level up more?
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
Like as you live, more shadows come up or more shadows are created for whatever reason. And it's up to you to continue to do that work or not. Right. But shadow work, I mean, like I've been doing shadow work for well over 15 years now. And I consistently am triggered by something, or something comes up for me, or I see a projection that I'm putting on someone, or there's something there that I can always work on, or I see something come up in my kids or the way that their behavior is affecting me. I'm like, oh, something's there for me to explore. And it gives me this opportunity to kind of look more, see what's there, give an observation, and grow as a person. But I really wish that it was like you can get through our book and then you get a certificate printed out, and then it's like shadow work complete, check, on to the next thing. It's not like that. Shadow work is ongoing, and it's a very personal journey for each person as well.
Yeah, and there's also that balance that you have to find when you're doing the healing work, but also integrate it in living a normal life. Like I feel like when people are on healing journey, they keep feeling like they have to continue to invest time and energy into their healing. And sometimes you just need to be a human and like integrate everything that you've learned thus far. Just be normal, right? You don't have to constantly be picking at yourself or feeling you have to heal something. You can just allow yourself to be a regular schmegular person, right?
And I think I've heard you guys refer to or compare shadow to ego. So is that, cause this is what it reminds me of, like, because your ego is always going to be there. It's just, you kind of have to like live with it. But how would you can you guys add anything about the ego?
Yeah, the ego is our identity, right? It's the mask that we're wearing. And the way that I see it, I was actually talking about this before. The way that I see it in my mind is you have the mask, right? And you have the shadow behind the mask. And then you have you, the authentic version of you, as that light, right? So it is the identity that we're projecting out to other people that is really not us. And the work is you investigating the reason behind that, right? Really seeing the shadow.
Yeah, and I think that one of the really cool things about the way that we wrote our book is that it's in these three parts, right? The first part is explaining what is shadow work, what is the shadow, because I think that it can be kind of confusing for a lot of people. You hear shadow work and they're just like, what is this though? So we took some time to just really write that out so people could have a easy understanding of it. The second part is all about integrating your shadow through exercises, which is exactly what we're talking about, right? It's not just about doing the work, but it's doing it in a self-compassionate way, in a loving manner to yourself. And those exercises really, really help. And because sometimes shadow work can be hard. I mean, for me, I came up on a lot of different stuff that was very confrontational, that was very difficult for me to come through. And it was through those exercises and really taking breaks and being gentle with myself and that self-compassion, self-love, that I was able to move through it. And the third part of the book is all about shadow work prompts. And there's over 60, I think there's like over 70 prompts actually in the book. And you can actually journal right there in it and work on it and work through those shadows. And it's like it's integrated in such a way that it's so supportive of your journey, and it gives you this way to make it sustainable so that you can continue to do it, rather than you feel confronted and you're like, ah, never gonna touch this again, you know, you throw the book away kind of thing. It's not like that. It's like you have this space to actually integrate your shadow, to give that self-love and self-compassion, so you keep going.
I love the idea of I think I've heard you guys explain this before, where it's like shining a light on the shadow so that it's, you know, it obliterates, however you say that word, the shadow, because you're giving it the love and attention, and then you're transmuting it, right?
Through self-love, yes.
Through self-love, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Your shadow's still there, right? It's not like it's obliterated and you never see it again kind of thing.
Okay.
Still there, but it's almost like you guys become besties. Like you're holding your shadow's hand rather than you being at war with it, right? Constantly in the space of fighting. You're kind of like, I understand you, and it's okay. And when that little shadow wants to pop up and be like, but you suck at this, and you say, you know what? It's okay. Just chill out for a little bit. I know I don't suck at this, and I'm going to try my best. And the shadow's like, okay, and just sits back down. So it's like you really finding this way to integrate with your shadow, because your shadow, you can't destroy your shadow. I wish, honestly, like I wish I could put it in a trash bag and take it out to the corner, but it doesn't happen that way. It's always going to be a part of us, and that's why learning to really like give it love and have that integration with it is life changing. It really changes the way that you show up in the world, and that you feel that you can be present with others and in your own life.
I feel like maybe when I refer to obliterating, I meant maybe like the belief, or like the thing that you're shining, the specific issue that you're shining a light on and transmuting. And then you're like, for example, like in that situation with the cycle of toxic relationships, then I'm aware of it. It was very uncomfortable when it came up. It was like embarrassing. It was like, oh, like that's kind of gross. Like, I don't know, just like, and I just like, it couldn't do it anymore. And then, yeah. So just the shining the light on that, like it just became so obvious. And then now I don't do that anymore. So it's no longer an issue. So it's kind of obliterated because it's no longer a part of my life. Just that particular pattern is obliterated, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I think once you see a shadow, like you can't unsee it. There's just no running from it anymore.
That's it. It can't be unseen. It was just like so starkly obvious. How did you guys come into spirituality? Like, were you guys raised this way, or did it come across a book or something? Like, how did you guys come into that?
I was raised this way. I was born from immigrant parents from India, largely raised by my grandmother, who very much believed in spirituality and, you know, doing things a certain way and manifesting and using our minds and prayer. We did pujas, and we had a very, very spiritual upbringing in comparison to what I think other people might have. And it wasn't until really like my teens that, because I had a good chunk of rebellion against everything I was taught, you know, meditation and why does this work and why do we have to read these, you know, the Vedas and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I was in my teens, early 20s that I was like, wait a second, there's something here, right? And I really had to come back to my own spirituality. It was actually in this period of time where I was going through this dark night of the soul when I dropped out of medical school, and I didn't have anywhere to go. I wasn't sure what I was doing with my life. I had no plan B, literally nothing. And I was living on a farm in Arizona as a farmhand, like working on the farm. And it was like one day when I was like, I'm complete with this experience. This is not what I want to do anymore. Working as a farmhand is so hard. And in Arizona, it's hot every day, you know, and this was the summer. It was blazing hot. We'd wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, do a bunch of work. And then the hottest part of the day, we would like not be outside because you'd die. Like it was so hot. And then you would work again, you know, later in the day. And I was like, I think I'm complete with this, right? And I said, I think now I'm going to shift my life and really change things. And that's kind of when I was like, okay, what I was doing before wasn't working, so let me try something new. And then I really got into spirituality, yoga, meditation, all this stuff. And thankfully at that time, my grandma was like, great, now you're ready, you know? And she really took me under her wing and taught me so much. And I learned from so many different teachers and, you know, people that were in the media and stuff like that. I had so many amazing opportunities to learn from like Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor and Gabby Bernstein, like all of these big name people, because I lived in New York at the time. So every time they came through, I was like, I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn from them. And it was just this beautiful evolution from there that just it's continuing. I think I always maintain this beginner's mindset to say like, Okay, what don't I know? Or what can I learn more of? Or how, okay, let me learn more about this topic. Even if it's something that I've been doing for many, many years, I'm like, cool, there's always something. There's always some little tip that I can pick up and continue and grow with.
Beautiful.
Yeah, mine was not like that at all. Okay, I'll insert another trigger warning for your listeners. So, right before COVID, like the end of 2019, I remember writing a letter to God, the universe. I was like, look, I'm about to check out and I have 3 kids and I don't want to leave them. So, something needs to change. So, I just couldn't do it anymore. My life had just become too toxic. It was really overwhelming. It was just all the yucky emotions, right? And so I wrote a letter. I was like, look, something needs to change. And then that was like late December, and so around January, I had a spiritual awakening. I had no idea what was happening. I actually had a reverse Kundalini awakening where it comes from the crown down into my root center, and so had a crown opening. I was learning how to channel. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember when COVID hit, I was at my corporate job and everybody was so nonchalant about it. I was like, do y'all not understand what's about to happen? Like, it just felt so big and no one understood. And I remember literally crying in my car because no one understood the immensity of what was about to shift in our world. I didn't know either. I just felt it. And so I think during COVID, like I went through a dark night of the soul, ended up crying a lot, doing a lot of meditations, really diving heavy into shadow work because I knew I needed to change something. I just didn't know how. And once I found shadow work on TikTok, actually, I found shadow work. I started doing a lot of shadow work. I started doing a lot of energy healing. And through that, I ended up developing my intuitive gifts. So I figured out I was channeling. I learned how to talk to my spirit guides. And now I'm actually mentoring clients to do the same thing on how to uncover their intuitive gifts and through energy work and through healing. And so it has just been so transformative. And it wasn't something that I actually anticipated. I think God was like, oh, you want to change? Okay, here we go. Now we're ready. That was my initiation. Now you're ready. And I do it all over again in a heartbeat, 100%.
That's so cool. Yeah. You guys have completely different like, stories.
Completely opposite stories.
That's so cool. You guys are both mothers. So could you maybe touch on like how you, in your opinion, like to raise children in this? Like, do you guys like teach about meditation or connection to spirit or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. It's interesting, but what I've learned through becoming a mother and this whole like transitionary process of becoming, the mother is that the best thing I can do for my children is to work on my own shadows. The best thing. Because you know what? Otherwise, in the things that they do, there's so many triggers that pop up for me, for any parent, right? And when I am able to recognize that and deal with it in a responsible way rather than in a reactionary way, it completely shifts who they are. Like we have this thing with my kids are very young. My daughter's 5, my son is 3, and I'm pregnant now. Probably give birth in the next 2 weeks or so. And it's like I know for them what we instill in our family every night before they go to bed. We talk to them about what they failed at today, right? And they always tell us with such exuberance, I messed up with this. And we're like, okay, cool. So what are you going to do tomorrow? And they're, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. And it just shifts their idea about failure out of it, right? When they spill something, when they make a mistake, man, when I spilled something or I broke a plate, it was rough in my house, right? But for them, it's like, oh, you made a mistake. What do you do? My daughter say, clean it up. And I say, is it a big deal? She says, no. And I said, okay, so what's next? I'm going to learn from this. And we're like, cool, and she'll clean it up and she'll learn from it and she'll go on. And it's like, there's never that fear that's set in them that I can't try this because I'm going to fail. What if I make a mistake? I can't do it. We're constantly in the space of nurturing them to know, like, life is yours. You're going to screw up. Like, you're going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail at stuff. And guess what? You're going to try something next, right? And we teach them this whole idea of trial till success. It's not, trial and error. It's trial till success. So you keep trying until you're successful. and you figure it out and you can kind of go with that. I think that that's been the biggest like shift for me as a parent, to really learn. And yeah, we teach them meditation, and we teach them prayers, and we teach them, different ways. My kids make money bowls and they're so excited about it. And they do salt baths and all the other stuff as well. But I think that the most profound lessons are the ones that we teach them really on a regular, everyday basis, that, it's even impactful for their friends. I remember that my daughter, who was going to like a co-op for homeschooling, she came home one day. We're all farmer. We live in a farming community, so a lot of the kids are farmer kids, right? She came home one day and she goes, last one to do this is a rotten egg. And I was like, what is that? Like, where did you pick that up from? And I was like, I don't like that rotten egg talk, right? So we shifted it. We said, first one to do this is the freshest egg. And she was like, what? And it totally shifted something. And I had gone to their school, I think it was like during drop off, and they were like, first one to take off your shoe is the freshest egg. And I was like, yeah, like, how cool is this that we're able to shift this little talk? And, they're always talking about the freshest egg now. And it's adorable, but it's so impactful in their own lives. And, this is just like little ways that we can shift things from them. But it's those little things that we do that then it's going to be expansive in their life, that they're going to remember, that's going to really make a difference for them as adults, as the future, as the next generation in our community, of what they're going to be and impact, how they're going to really impact the world.
Oh my God, that egg example is so funny, but it's so powerful. That's like, I remember like people would say that when I was a kid, like last one's a rotten egg, whatever. It's like it forms a belief, like you're a loser if you're at the end or whatever. Like it's a very simple mindset shift, and it's super powerful. It's such a funny little thing to say, but I'm sure that creates waves. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm 100%. I'm gonna totally use that because my kid said that the other day, and I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna say fresh as egg. She's gonna be so excited. Okay, I'll segue into my own motherhood journey. So my kids have actually seen my transformation. My kids are older. They're 10, 7, and 6. And so they've seen the old version of me, like the angry, really sad person, and they've seen the transformation to who I am now. And my oldest daughter, she always says, like, I'm so glad that you started meditating. I'm so glad that you started doing whatever you're doing, because you're just so much happier now. You're so much nicer. You're so much calmer. Like, they saw the shift in me. So that's so validating. But the way that I raise my kids is we have a connection to spirit. I show them how to pray, how to call in protection. My daughter, my oldest, is telepathic. Like, I remember when she was born, my ex-husband, who is not spiritual whatsoever, he would say, I swear she's reading my mind. I swear. Like, she was like a newborn. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he kept saying that every year. I swear she's reading my mind. And she is. She can totally read your mind. And she proved him right. Like, as she got older and she was able to speak, he was like, I told you she could read our mind. And I'm like, she's telepathic. Like, okay, cool. That's amazing. And so she's very intuitive. She's also a Pisces. Maybe that's why. My son, I've taught him how to call in protection. And I remember one time he woke me up and he was like, Mom, I think I called in way too many angels because now I'm really scared. And he told me that, like, angels actually look really scary. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. Like, we need to have a talk about boundaries and how many we call in, right? We just need a little bit of help. We don't need to call in the whole team. And he got really overwhelmed. But I tell them, like, how they can protect their energy. I tell them how to talk to their body, because we have such an amazing connection with our body. We can actually instruct our body to do what we need to do. Just yesterday, my son had like got a cut on his eye, and I was like, okay, let's ask yourselves to go to this area and heal it immediately because it's super uncomfortable. And so we work with energy. We work with our body and spirit. And my youngest is my most confident, powerful little baddie because she has been raised into this nurturing environment where you get to speak your boundaries, right? You get to speak your emotions. You get to tell your brother and sister how you're going to allow them to treat you. Even like I was tucking her in the other day and I was like getting close and snuggling with her. And she's like, could you like back up a little bit? You're a little bit too close. I would not have ever been allowed to say that. Like, I love that she had that boundary. So I was like, okay, girl. Like, they have their own boundaries. They talk to each other and tell each other how they feel. They're very communicative in their emotions, which I love because that was something I wasn't able to do. So when they have a fight, I'm like, look, we're all going to sit down. We're going to hash it out because y'all need to figure out how you're going to live with each other until you move out. Like, we got a long journey here. We need to get along. And so just really having that connection and having that emotional maturity to know how you're feeling. And when you get angry and you explode, right? Sometimes it's okay to do that, but also how can we make a different choice next time, right? And just to be aware of how they're feeling has been so, so powerful. My son, he's the most like emotional, just because he's just so he's the middle child, he's the only boy. And so I remember one time he got really, really upset and he like blew up. And then later on he came to me, he's like, Mom, I got really, really angry and I realized that I let my anger get the best of me. And I was like, whoa. He was 6 and he was having this epiphany, like, I let my emotions get out of control. And he's like, I should have just taken a deep breath and I should have calmed down before I reacted. And I'm like, wow. It was the most powerful moment in my mothering journey. Like, I'm doing the work and they're reciprocating in the way that I'm teaching them. And so I think being a spiritual mother has really helped me, because now we can all be in connection with our emotions and figure out how can we respond rather than react, right?
I want to
It's
commend
it's
both
so
of
cool.
you guys for mothering that way and teaching about emotional intelligence and regulation
Mhm.
and connection to spirit and all of that. That's a really noble journey, and I want to commend both of you for doing that. And it's giving me a lot of inspiration for my future. So thank
Love that.
you. Maybe let's go back to the book. So the who do you think the book is for? Like, if somebody like, is this a good thing for someone who's never done it before? Is this if somebody is well versed in self work, is that still valuable for them? Like, who's it for?
Yeah, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
And we particularly wrote it with that intention, that it would be accessible for everybody, the newbie versus someone that's been doing this for a while. Like I said, it's that even if you've been doing it for a while, there's always going to be a little nugget of golden nugget that you can find in there, something that's going to shift for you. I think that we have been working with clients for so long, and so many different clients. One of the things that I really realized was, like, if we don't make it accessible and easy, you're not going to do it. Right? As much as I love my clients, it's the truth, right? After all these years, it's the pattern that I've seen again and again. So we purposely made this book as easy and obstacle free as possible, right? It's an easy read. Even the beginning, when we're talking about shadow work, it's a short and easy read. It's very accessible. The exercises are all laid out for you. You don't have to do them in a certain pattern. You can come in, flip through the book, and say, okay, today I'm going to do on challenging my limiting beliefs. And the next day I'm going to work on doing mirror work, or whatever the case is. It's there for you, right? When you're ready to work for the prompts are there for you. And it's just like an easy entry for you to work on. Even if you've been doing shadow work for a while, you're definitely going to find something new and innovative through the book.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and the way that we structured the book is so that you could focus on self love, right, and self compassion. There's so many different ways to do shadow work. Like I mentioned, I used to do shadow work by implementing energy work right after it. But the way that we've structured this book is to focus on having and holding that space for compassion, right, and acceptance, and most importantly, love, and accepting every part of your journey and accepting that part of your shadow, so that you can come back to self love and remembering, like, you are your biggest supporter on this journey, no matter where you are.
Beautiful. Do you guys
Yeah.
have any books that you guys came across on your journey that changed the way you think, or that changed your life, like in a spiritual genre?
So many.
Yeah.
I'm a
If
big
you had to pick one or two.
I'm a big book nerd. Man, there's so many. I love Louise Hay books. I think that those were very impactful for me in my life. Another author is Yvonne Perry for empaths. I think that this is a book that I highly recommend. I'm always recommending it to clients. It's called Whose Stuff Is This by Yvonne Perry. Um, Man, there's so many. I love books by Florence Shinn, Shinn. She has some really profound books about mindset and really how we access things. I love Esther and Jerry Hicks. They write from Abraham Hicks. It's a entity that she channels. I love her. I mean, I literally could talk about books all day about it, because like I read a lot. I'm a avid, voracious reader, and I just love to consume the knowledge of others and see what's there. I love Jen Sincero and all her badass industry of books. Those were very impactful for me. And actually, the last time her book was actually one of the reasons that I know that I manifested the ability to actually work with Penguin Random House, because I had her book stacked on my shelf one day. And I remember walking by them, and becoming an author was always like a manifestation that I had been working on for years. I had on my vision board, I had it in all these different places. But I remember one day I had walked by and I saw this little like penguin with the circle around it. And I was like, I'm going to be published by that by that publisher one day. And I just walked into my room. I think it was like the next day I had gotten this email and said like, hey, we're interested in working with you. You know, da da da. We have these book ideas, and it was from Zeitgeist, and Zeitgeist is the partnership publisher of Penguin Random House. And I was just like,
Wow.
yeah, wow. But I just felt it that day. That little penguin was like, we're coming for you. You know, like it gave me a little signal, and I was like, cool, cool.
That's so funny. Okay, so my favorite books are my The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's so good. I think, and there's a section in there. I listened to the audiobook, and the section in there was about like not all thoughts are ours, and they're just consciousness. And when I heard that, I was like, it was like a light bulb moment. Like, not everything I'm thinking belongs to me. What? I didn't know that. And so that really helped me disconnect from my thoughts so that I don't have to internalize everything that they're telling me. Life-changing book, highly recommend. And my second one is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That one really helped me understand that all the anger that I was holding was affecting my body, and I was literally repeating the same day every day. Like, I was always in a constant state of anger over and over and over again. And once I realized that I could either hold on to my past, right, and allow it for it to make me angry today, or I could choose to heal and move to that and just be present in how I'm feeling and how I'm being today. And those two books were like top game changers for me to understand how my past shaped my now, so that I could really disconnect the two, because it really is a choice. You can hold your past as like this armor and carry it with you, and hold this heavy backpack, or you can choose to let it go, right, in whatever capacity that looks like for you, in order to embrace who you can be without that, right?
Yeah.
So powerful.
I think Michael Singer has a podcast, and
Really?
he said, yeah. And he said this one thing on it, and he was like, it's like what you're saying about creating the same day, or like holding on to an emotion, or a memory or whatever, and you're holding it like this pen, you're holding it in your hand. And he's like, it's so simple, but we overcomplicate it. It's like, just let go. It's like, oh, but it hurts so much. And oh, like it's just the way I've always been. And da, da, da. And it's
Yes.
like, but just let go. And you just let go. It's like, it's so much more simple than we make it out to be.
Really, it really is, right? Like, you can hold resentment and anger for anything that's happened to you, or you can choose to allow it to be what it is, right? In whatever way it shaped you, and also let go. Simple.
Beautiful. Yes. If there was one message that you guys wanted to leave with the audience, what would that message be?
My message would be to be kind and to perpetuate kindness. I think that that's truly the root of the world changing and everything shifting. And when I say that, it's like not only to others, but to yourself, because the kindness that we sow for ourselves is the kindness that we can reap for yourself and others as well. And just continue to be that person and be who you want to see in the world, because it starts with you. You are very powerful, and it's really important for us to step into our power and be empowered to know that we have that control and that we do have the impact upon the world.
Love that. I'm going to say follow your intuition. We have been conditioned to always listen to everybody else, right? Our external validation, opinions, judgment, blah, blah, blah. But when you start coming back in and remembering who you are, right, and you start finding your inner light, you get to guide yourself, right? And you get to choose how you want to think, behave, believe, act, all the things. And that's going to be your guiding light. And it's so incredibly transformative once you start listening to you, allowing you to guide you. So follow your intuition, people, please. It's amazing.
Yes. I will add to that intuition piece. That's with the pattern of like when people might resonate with that, like being stuck in the same relationship, like you said, like we were talking about, like the intuition was talking to me the whole time, and I knew the whole time deep down, and I just ignored until it got so loud I couldn't ignore it anymore, and it just exploded. So yeah, listening to it would have saved a lot of pain.
Yeah, she was like, red flag, red flag. Right?
I always think like your intuition comes and it's like this concept of let go or get dragged comes up,
Yes.
right? Because it always starts as a whisper. It's a little tap on the shoulder. It's like these cute little things. Oh, hey, you probably, then it ends up in the face and you're dragged and, all of this, like it builds up. So I'm always like, let's just anytime I get into a hit, I'm like, I'm gonna try it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sooner the better.
Yes. 100%.
I love that. Let go or get dragged. That's so real. Okay, where can people find you and your book if they want to connect with you?
Sure, you can find me on TikTok, on Instagram. My handles are usually Latha_Jay. Both of my accounts are verified, so please look for the one with the check mark because there are scammer accounts out there. You can find me on my website as well, which is www.lathajay.com. That's LATHAJAY.com. And I think that those are the biggest spots. Our book is available on Amazon. It's also available at Target, Barnes & Nobles, and a bunch of different retailers, as well as online retailers. You might want to just call in ahead if you're going to go into the store or purchase it online because it is available pretty much everywhere online now.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm. And you can find me at TikTok or on TikTok at Valerie_Inez and Instagram at Valerie Inez 111, and it's INEZ, or my website, valerieinez.com.
Beautiful. It's been amazing speaking with you lovely women today. So thank you so much for joining me on the Divine Hangout.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.